Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got an interesting show for you. All right, we're going to do a prediction video on the Vols versus Virginia in Week 1, and I'm going to show you a video, and we're going to react to that as well. All right, so I was watching a YouTube video, and it was a prediction video on the Vols versus the Virginia Cavaliers, and I found it pretty interesting. I'm going to show you some snippets of it, and then I'm going to react to that, and then I'm going to give you my opinion on how the game's going to go and what I think will happen.
In Tennessee, game number 6. We got another ACC-SEC neutral site battle, the Cavs and the Volunteers, but this one does not look to be nearly as close as the one that we covered earlier between the two Carolinas. At BetUS right now, Tennessee is a 28-point favorite with a total of 58.5. Now, this is going to be Virginia's first game since November 12th last season. The last 2 games of their season were canceled due to, of course, everybody knows by now, that senseless tragedy in Charlottesville. It's been tough to gauge what to make of this team in the offseason, as, you know, any player that could leave has left the program. Virginia number 120 in adjusted returning production. They're number 130 on offense, and they'll be expected to keep up with, you know, a Josh Heupel offense that appears to have weapons galore here. Parker, I'm ready to hear you build on the Joe Milton hype, but one thing that Virginia does have going for it is a strong defense. They've got former Air Force defensive coordinator John Rudzinski. They surprised some teams last year.
Yeah, Virginia's not in a good spot. Of course, like I say, they ended the season on a tragic note, and they really had a poor season anyway on top of that. So they're going into this game, and we're favored by 4 touchdowns. And they call it a neutral site. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. Do you remember the neutral site that we had with Vanderbilt last year? So-called neutral. Well, it wouldn't have been a neutral site. It was actually a home field advantage for Vanderbilt. It was supposed to be. If you watch the game, it was 75% orange, and it was pouring down rain, and the Vols showed up. And, of course, you know, they won that thing in epic fashion, and they ran the ball all over Vanderbilt. They were kind of hapless. The Vols were very motivated. After that loss to South Carolina, the defense was going to prove that they're not a cakewalk, and they didn't allow Vanderbilt to score a single point. But anyway, Virginia's coming into this, and their offense was terrible last year. I mean, it was bad. Their defense was okay, but you know, who did they play? When you look at Virginia's schedule and who they've been playing and all that, you know, they play in a very weak conference, which is the ACC, and I'll show it to you. I'm going to try to be kind about this, but here's their schedule. They've got one tough game, and it's right here, and it's Tennessee, right off the bat. After that, they play JMU. What is that, Jackson? I don't even know what that is. Maryland, NC State, Boston College, William and Mary, UNC, Miami, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Duke, and Virginia Tech. What do you think the Vols' record would be with that schedule? Okay, the best team in the ACC was Clemson last year, and I'll show you that record right here, and they got 2 divisions. Clemson was 8-0 in the conference. 2 of their 3 losses were to SEC teams. And then Florida State, who was 5-3, and on down the path there. You know, North Carolina was 6-2 on the other division, which is where Virginia is. Virginia was 1-6 and 3-7, and their wins were against really puny teams, honestly. So again, what do you think the Vols' record would be if they played in the ACC? The one team that was good last year was Clemson, and we beat them by, 17 points or 20 points or whatever it was at a neutral site with our backup quarterback. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why a lot of these conferences are screaming for the SEC to go to 9 games, because when they add a 9th game, who are they going to play? Look what happens when you add a 9th game. You had Syracuse, you had Wake Forest, you had Boston College. I guess you'd add Georgia Tech. They were 4-4. I mean, it's no big deal for them to add a 9th game. You know, one of our easiest games technically will be the Virginia game. We're a 4-touchdown favorite at a neutral site. So before we even consider going to 9 games, the money better be there. And I don't see ESPN ponying up the dough. They're letting people go left and right. They've got 2 things going against them there. They've got viewing habits. A lot of people are viewing things differently, and there's a lot more competition. And then, of course, you know, they got very political, which is not a good idea. When you're talking about sports, just stick to sports. You know, when you start getting into politics and doing all that, it makes for a mass exodus, and just stick to sports. So anyway, let's get into what these guys are having to say. But again, it's not looking good for Virginia.
7 in passing explosiveness allowed. They were number 16 in rushing explosiveness, and that goes directly against what Heupel wants to do. With the line this big, I mean, 28 points. How do you even start to break this one down?
One, as much as it would warm my heart for Joe Milton and Tennessee to show up on the scene and score 28 points, or win by 28 points, I really think that's an underestimate of what Virginia's defense was last year. Their offense was systematically dismantled. It was on purpose. It was disappointing. I'm glad that Brendan Armstrong was able to get out, and they wanted to move on too. Like, I think that was a win-win there. But they Tony Elliott wants to do something different on offense here. Virginia's offense last year, 97th in EPA per game. Their defense was 19th, and specifically against the pass, they were 41st, a little worse, but they were 16th against the rush. So, like, it's not a bad unit on defense. The returning production is going to be really hard, but I do think they're going to play a pace that is going to kind of limit the ability for a 28-point total here. I think that's just too much. I know that everyone wants to come out. I know Josh Heupel wants to come out and score 68 points. And I do love Joe Milton. I will take this opportunity on the show to say, you should go back to some old tweets about Will Levis and see what people have said about Will Levis and what I'm saying about Joe Milton, and maybe read between the lines a little bit there. But I think it's possible Joe Milton's not a starter by the end of the season. I don't think that's likely, but it's definitely possible with what they had there. Virginia's in a bad situation. I think the biggest problem with Virginia is not just it's not talent. Even though the talent disparity is there right now, Tennessee is 19th and Virginia is 62nd. And so there is kind of a big gap from where they want to go. But the bigger problem.
He's being nice. 62nd to 19th is a huge disparity. There's such a difference between top 20 and over 50th in NCAA football. It's huge. And then on top of it, you've got look, what are they going to try to run the ball on us? That's the one thing that we're actually good at defense is against the run in the SEC. Some ACC school's going to run on us? I don't think so. They'll be able to shorten the game only because there won't be first down timeouts like there have been for every year that college football's existed, I guess. The clock will immediately keep running even after a first down. That's the one thing that is going to shorten games. But I don't see them keeping the ball out of our hands or out of Joe Milton's hands in that offense because they're not going to be able to run the ball. So maybe they can pass, but who's going to pass it? So I don't know. I think Virginia's really up against it. But, we'll let them continue on. Like I said, I've been wrong before. I mean, maybe you don't see Heupel getting beaten by a team that's considerably less talented. It's just I hadn't seen it, not in 2 years.
Not that they don't have the guys to do what they want. It's that I don't think they're 100% sure of where they want to be as a football team right now. And obviously, I'm not not saying anything about like the last season, but like there's just a lot going on at Virginia off the field, and that's really, really hard. Hopefully for them this offseason, they can kind of say, all right, let's get somebody in here who's got some experience. I guess they're going to start this Monmouth kid who has a great name, Tony Muskett, I believe. That's pretty funny.
Yes.
And I think that they could say, all right, we're going to bring a guy in who's got some experience running a consistent offense and is going to be a little less boom and bust, maybe raise our floor a little bit. We can try to continue this defensive excellence and march on. But I think it's really hard you would love an FCS game before you stare the buzzsaw of one of the nation's best offenses last year. And, Cedric, do I have those backwards? Which one's coming back? Cedric Tillman?
Tillman is not. Hold on. No, Brew McCoy.
McCoy. Yeah, it's McCoy's there. Yes. I was like, who's the guy who was at Texas and USC, then Texas and USC, and now he's at Tennessee? Yep. Yes, Brew McCoy. I think that that Tennessee's going to have talent on the outside. Tennessee's going to put Virginia in compromising situations, and I'm fascinated. Paxton, good idea. Love that comment. Tennessee first half, always a thought here when you're thinking about like will they keep the foot on the gas? What can Heupel do with Milton's legs? Like not that Hendon Hooker was a bad runner at all, but like Milton legitimately could be very interesting.
I've been saying for a while that if Milton would add that dynamic, that running dynamic to his game, he could be incredibly dangerous. First of all, the guy's like 6'5", 240. I think he's 230 now. He's lost some weight. And if you watched him in the spring game, he ran a few times, and they were planned runs. If he adds that dynamic to his game, kind of like Anthony Richardson, now he's not going to be that level of freak athlete. But if you've seen him, if you've seen what an athlete this guy is, he can do the backwards flip just like Richardson did, which is incredibly difficult to do, especially at that height. So, and he's very fast. That's the other thing. People think, oh, he's not. He's very fast for his size, and you can't just tackle him. So if he adds the ability to run it, he probably won't in the Virginia game. Probably won't. If he does start adding it, it'll probably be the Florida game. But he's going to have to, get a little bit of that, get a little bit used to it at some point. So we might see some of that. But, yeah, that would really change things for defenses. Because right now they're thinking, well, he's not going to run, so let's just defend the pass and the regular running lanes. He could really cause problems. Hendon Hooker destroyed teams with his legs last year. I mean, destroyed them. So that's going to be interesting. The other thing is he said Tennessee's going to put him in compromising situations. They don't have anybody to cover Squirrel White. They don't have a soul that's going to be able to cover that dude. He has burner speed. At 5'9", he is a matchup nightmare. All right, then they got Brew McCoy, who's going to bully the crap out of those defensive backs. And then they got Dante Thornton, who is 6'4", 6'5", can run like the wind, can jump. Another matchup nightmare, especially in the end zone on those back shoulder passes. So you've got those three guys. And then Ramel Keaton, who is just steady Eddie. And then you've got Cam Selden, who runs a sub-4 440, and the guy's 220 pounds. How are you going to match up with that? All right, so you got that on the outside, which is a nightmare. Okay, ask Alabama, ask anybody. Then on top of it, you've got the three-headed monster running backs. Okay, so let's say, okay, we're not going to let them run on us because Tennessee runs a ton, and they put 8 in the box. Okay, now you've got all these freak athletes out here and Joe Milton throwing to them. Okay, now we're going to spread out. We're going to put 6 in the box or 7. Now we're just going to run all over you like we did Vanderbilt.
That's not fair.
Don't raise your voice to me.
It's going to be really tough for Virginia. I don't think they understand what they're going up against. I don't think they play very many SEC teams, and Tennessee's the most difficult to deal with on offense. They just are.
If they were going to try to do any kind of rush offense. I mean, I don't think he was a good passer at Michigan by any stretch of imagination, but he's a pretty good rusher. And so it will be interesting to see if there's any kind of dimensionality that Heupel can unlock with a rushing forward quarterback. We'll see how that plays into everything. We'll also see maybe Heupel loves Milton, and he says, let's just beat Virginia because we know we can and not give anybody any inclination about what's going to happen with him this season and try to keep an edge. Who knows? So I think 28 is a little bit too much here. I'm not super optimistic about Virginia, though, so I'd hate to bet it, but maybe a first half is something interesting.
This, with the spread of 28, I mean, it's just wild. Kyle, the total is sitting at 58.5, and that spread, it's expecting a score of somewhere around like 43-15. I can't get the Pitt game from last year out of my head. And I understand that Pitt is a significantly better team than Virginia was last season, right? Virginia's offense was pathetic last year, and that was putting it nicely. As Parker talked about, that was with Brendan Armstrong and a cast of somewhat proven skill players. They're going to have all new faces on that side of the ball. Like Tennessee, on the other hand, they got a bunch of dudes that have been in Heupel's system for a while. Their returning production is only number 57, though. Like, Kyle, what are you looking for here between the Vols and the Cavs? Because I cannot get that Pitt game out of my head. This is a neutral site game. It's going to be mostly Vols fans, but I don't think that Heupel's just going to unleash the whole playbook here. I think that they're just going to kind of go out and get a win and build up for that Florida game in week 3.
I mean, Virginia comes into the season in the toughest of spots. It's hard to handicap what they would be like at the beginning of the season. They're badly outclassed as far as talent in a game like this. It's hard for me to trust a Virginia team that offensively was that bad when they had Brendan Armstrong. I mean, they just totally wrecked the offense. Musket comes in at quarterback. I can't imagine they're going to be really good on offense. Now, the defense has certainly made big improvement last year. I think they'll be decent this year. The secondary is pretty good. You got to be careful what you say about Tennessee. Those Tennessee fans in the comments, they get really fiery. So we'll see. We'll see who they go after first. But
I've never heard of such a ridiculous comment.
How dare you?
Tennessee fans are some of the most calm, reasonable people in the world. They would never freak out. Sounds like maybe he's dealt with a few.
Tennessee kind of doesn't have the superstars at the other skilled positions on offense that they've had in some of the other years. I think Heupel is certainly a great offensive mind. They have good depth. They did bring in some solid transfers on the offensive line. The Tennessee defense, I think, is better than most people realize it is. They brought in a couple good BYU defensive players from the portal. And their defense, it's kind of unfair to just look at them by points given up or, some of the stats that some people would look at, because they play so fast on offense that they're going to give up a lot of yards. They're going to give up a decent amount of points. But efficiency-wise, this is a decent defense. I think the talent gap here is pretty big. Virginia, I think, fortunate to win like 3 games this year. I know they have a really low season win total. The question is Tennessee going to keep their foot on the gas? I will say Josh Heupel's teams have run up the score in the past. You can look at the ATS numbers. He has been happy to run up the score. Now, in this spot, you would kind of think that this would be a good spot to get out of Dodge, like Gary said, and not show too much. I think Tennessee first half bet is probably the bet that I would like the best in this one that was brought up there in the chat. So that would be my lean, thinking that Tennessee would be too dominant there early on. But, I can't bet Virginia in a game like this. I think Virginia is just too many question marks, not enough talent.
I tend to agree. LFG, by the way, jumped in the chat here. He said, how soon before Nico Wally Pips Milton? Hey, like Parker knows what he's talking about here. Like, Milt's going top 5 in the NFL draft, guys. Like, what are we talking about?
At some point, we're going to have to pull the reins on it. I don't know when, but we'll get through the Florida game. He can run this offense. It would be awesome. Oh, it'd be great. Yes. I would love for him to be a top 5 quarterback. Without a twinge of irony. It would be great.
You got that right.
All right. So they made some very valid points in there. Our defense it gets knocked hard, and it's because the South Carolina game was a big part of it. Plus, several quarterbacks had their way with our defensive backfield as far as just ridiculous numbers of yards, over 400 yards, 3 different quarterbacks. And that's got to change. We handled the run fine. That was the big difference between 2021 and 22. We couldn't stop anything in 21. It was just we were just a sieve. 2022, we stopped the run fine. We couldn't stop the pass at all. I think we were 127th against the pass, and there's only like 131 or 133 schools. Rushing-wise, we were in the top 40. I think we were 31st. And we did improve a full touchdown with our defense, which is right here. We went from 90th in the country, which was a disaster, and that's why we were 7-6, even though we scored like crazy. But in the 2022, it dropped almost a full touchdown, and we wound up 36 in the country. If this trend continues, which it should, I think we'll be down in the upper teens next year and get down closer to 20th. And that's when we become a very dangerous team.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
That's exactly right. And as far as Joe Milton, as I've said many times, we're going to go as far as he takes us to a point and realize we've got a very good quarterback room. We've got the biggest 5-star in the country right behind him. I don't know that he'll be ready to go day one, but he's going to have been there 9 months. He's been there since the Orange Bowl. And then behind him, you've got Gaston Moore, who I think that guy's terrific. I really do. I saw him in the spring game, and he looked great. So I feel great about our QB room. I think Joe's going to go out there, and he's not going to have any trouble against Virginia. None at all. We won't know for sure with Joe until the Florida game. That is the ultimate stress test, really, is playing down at the Swamp. But as he said, I don't lose in Florida. And he certainly didn't in that Orange Bowl. He took on a very good Clemson defense that is SEC quality, and that's the big thing. There's only one SEC quality team in the ACC. Currently, that's Clemson, and it has been for the last 10 years. Now, Florida State and Miami are trying to get up that hill, but they're not there. Only Clemson's there, and that's because Clemson gets the players, and they're having a real good recruiting class this year too. That's about it. So I think this is a very unfortunate first game for Virginia. It would have been so much better off for them to play, a William and Mary or just some easy school rather than starting out against the absolute most prolific offense in the country. That is just very unfortunate for them. So we'll see how it goes, but the 28 points I think is dead on. And I just wanted to cover this. I thought that video was pretty interesting. They brought up a lot of good points. It's going to be a fun game for the Vols to watch. Virginia fans are probably not going to enjoy it so much. But, it'll get easier for them as the schedule moves forward and they can they need to get back on the field anyway. Maybe they'll improve over the year. If you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's be able to continue to cover the Vols and the SEC and all our opponents and everything. If you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit that little button. I would appreciate it. And right over here is the most recent video. Be sure to check that out. YouTube thinks you'll love it. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.